everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bobble Pod. This is episode 7. I really hope you've liked the first 6 episodes. If you haven't caught up, do go back and listen to them. Today we are going to be welcomed by an amazing guest, Tony Mallet, who wrote this very amazing book, Inspirational Leads. I'll get more into that. But as always, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, give us a comment, give us a like, press the bell notification so you get up to date insights in terms of when content comes out. Episodes come out every Tuesday. So thank you. And first of all, I'd like to welcome Tony to Bobble Pod. Welcome, Tony.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Manny.
We met earlier this year, just before Climb.
We did.
Yes, we met around about April, May time. And I was blown away by just your personality, your character, your enthusiasm, your history as a teacher. But for a quick 1-minute introduction for our listeners and our watchers, please give a brief introduction in terms of who you are and what you do.
Sure. School teacher for 20 odd years, passionate about inspiring young people, young small children on going for their dreams, following their passion. Felt like the paradigm of education it was time for Tony to move on. So I took a leap in 2017 to start my own business, Inspirational Leads, which was centered on taking all of that knowledge and experience from teaching into the world of business, which is grounded in the development of people and leadership skills. I developed a gamification project so that I could play with apprentices to develop 27 key skills for the workplace, soft skills or critical skills. I won a place on the Build program run by Leap and Leeds City Council, which is amazing because then the ecosystem just blew in terms of leads. And I've met some amazing people within business. It's just so exciting. During that process, I was writing the book, but I made sure the book was ready when it was ready. So it's traced my journey through resilience. And I'm now at kind of an epiphany point, Maddie, where the biggest number one factor in that journey that's enabled me still to be thriving now is resilience. And it's taken 6 years to sort of really bury down to that. Real quick, just so that everyone's very clear about where I'm coming from on this angle. I was sat on a train, I'm looking out the window, and when you look onto the next track and you're going at speed, it just looks like 2 straight lines. They don't look joined. Yeah. Well, I thought somebody at some point in history, when they built tracks, has had to sit down and work just on joining those 2 tracks and making sure they're absolutely parallel to get to the destination, but they're present. They're fixated on the now, on what they're doing. And that's led me into sort of bringing things into the workplace to work with young people where we actually build a train track and develop 6 processes for resilience. So that's really sort of where I'm up to. It's incredibly exciting, loads to share, but I want to get behind the curtain today, Manny, of what resilience actually means.
So the episode title for this one is, and thank you for that great introduction, insightful introduction, Tony, is Get on the Right Track for Resilience Development. Now you might think, well, what's that got to do with marketing? But remember, this podcast isn't just about marketing. It's about all the other elements within business that impact marketing. So if you're listening, you need resilience in all elements of business, as a leader, as a marketeer, as a salesperson, as a HR person, and in your everyday lives. So we've got a few questions that we want to get to. But the first thing I want to talk about quickly is your book. So there is a book. We don't really do plugs, but I was kind enough to have given a signed copy by Tony Mallet. And if you don't mind, I'll read what he said. He says, "Dear Bobble, oh my God, can't believe I've just met the most wonderful person and the key to open so many doors," which actually, thank you for saying that. And you used my quote, which was "without fear and without hate," which is one of my favorite quotes. And it's actually embroidered on the inside of my bangle. It's a quote I live by, in terms of life, like live without fear and live without hate. And then you actually, can get the most out of life. It's a very detailed book. It's available on Amazon.
Yes, and also on inspirationalleadsbook.com.
Yeah. How much is the book?
$12.99.
$12.99. I mean, for how many pages is it? It's like,
I think 360
pages for $12.99. That's actually good value for money. And I've been reading it on my travel journeys, and it's actually really, really helpful. And the game element is really, really good. But we've got some questions from James.
Hello.
So
nice to meet you, Tony.
Nice to meet you, James.
I find what you were kind of explaining there in terms of your journey really interesting. So what kind of people do you find yourself working with now. It sounds like previously working as a teacher, kind of working with young people, perhaps now working with adults and kind of older people. What are the similarities? What are the differences working with those groups?
Well, fundamentally, within education, the focus was 100% on your client, your pupil in that class. And I still tutor now. So I had this transition stage from education into the world of business. It wasn't going to suddenly happen overnight. And I still tutor, and that's completely booked up. I call it coaching. Most of the parents get me in, not because they want the curriculum sorted out, although that is obviously a huge aspect of it. It's more about mindset. But my belief is that need is still equally prevalent within the workplace. People within the workplace, it's just like a class of children. They have their needs. They want to feel trusted. They want to get a buzz. They want to get a feedback. And it's so similar. So by me tutoring every night is wonderful, because during the day I can do all my entrepreneurial things. And by the way, everybody, funny story here, Manny. This morning I had a roofer come round to the house just to check our roof, because it's got a bit of a leak. And I was chatting away to him, and he asked me what I did, and I told him I was an entrepreneur. He went, "Oh, wow, an entrepreneur! I've really wanted to meet one of those." As though I was some kind of like weird sort of person. I really wanted to meet one of those. He went, "Oh, tell me more." And I was like, "Wow, he's really interested in what an entrepreneur is." And he said, "No, good on. What are you doing today then?" So I said, "Well, I'm going to do a podcast this morning." And I said, "I love it, because I got my entrepreneurial day, tutor at night." But I said I was going to come to see Manny, and he was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Good on you, man. Good on you, man." I thought, wow, there's an indication that this term resilience is, I think, the most fundamental desire that everyone's wanting to find out more, because it's, to me, the secret to fulfillment in life and in work. So I thought, wow, if the roof was saying that to me, that's pretty cool, because that's like from the ground up, you know. Yeah. So in answer to your question, taking all those skills from teaching into the workplace is just such a thrill, because engagement, you know, obviously if you've got a class of children, you got to make sure you engage them within seconds, because they just switch off. All those skills being transferred into the workplace is so exciting. So when I go in, it's your USP, what energy are you sharing, Tony, but also how are you engaging? Are you just standing and talking, or are you getting people to do and work and play? So it's brilliant. And as time goes by, that match just gets stronger and stronger. Because then the parents, they might be CEOs, business leaders, so they get talking as well. And it's just all this like connection that's happening. So a huge link between the two.
That's awesome. Your passion really shines through, like within seconds of hearing you talk, which is amazing. Also, I need the number for your roofer, because sounds amazing. Enough. Sounds great. What I want to get into now a little bit is just that word resilience. And it's a word that in recent years has probably been knocked around a little bit more. I think through COVID, it was a word that people started using a bit more. But what do we actually mean by it? What do you think of when you think of resilience, Bally? What does it mean to you?
We were having this conversation earlier. Most people don't know is that we actually have good conversations, discussions about the questions that are coming up before the podcast. And
we actually do prep.
Yes, we do prep. But we were talking about this, and I was like, resilience isn't something you have, it's something you gain over time. And unfortunately, you gain from all the crap that happens to you in life. Resilience is what makes you stronger, a better leader. So you have to have negative or, bad results or losses to build resilience. The more resilient you are, the more life experience you have, the more work experience you have. When I look at resilience for me, and it's never the same for everyone. It's a bit like when you talk about trauma in a sense, and like someone's trauma, how little it is for them, it's still traumatic for them. No matter, you can't compare your trauma because it's at a higher level to someone else's. Resilience is resilience no matter where you go through something small or something big, you still build resilience from it. For me, when I look at resilience, I look back from, we've already talked about this in previous podcasts, to my, kidney failure, getting through that, setting up a business nearly collapsing, coming through difficult economic sessions, resilience in terms of relationships with family. So personal things that happen to me, work things that happen to me, the resilience of going and keep on going and building a company despite setbacks, that builds resilience over time. And I think that builds individual character, leaderships and core skills that you learn, because by having that resilience of being able to deal with it and not let it impact you and let it go down to a spiral, a downward spiral, that resilience makes you a better seasoned, more mature person or individual, which means the next time you face a difficult problem or solution in your life, you have some form of resilience to be able to deal with it based on past experiences. What about you, Tony?
You see, I absolutely agree, Manny, but I think resilience is fundamental to what we are as human beings. And when I was sat on that train and I was looking out at that train track next to me whizzing by that looked like one straight line, and that analogy of somebody having to focus to make sure it's absolutely parallel, they were present in that moment, engaged in that. I've come up, Manny, with this is fundamental to what I believe about resilience. And again, it's a path I've had to travel on. 3 key points here. First of all, the general idea, the resilience is just about bouncing back, manning up, knuckle down, get on with it, to me isn't the whole answer. And I think if you share that with a young person now in the workplace, they're just going to look at you blank. It's like, well, there's more to that. And I've discovered this, passionate to share this. So simply asking people to study and develop greater willpower and behaviour, focus and persistence, they're all secondary conditions. What do I mean by that? Well, just asking somebody to have greater willpower and persistence, that's a secondary act. A primary act is what's going on inside the mind, what you emotionally getting engaged with. So by trying to tackle those, you can't move forward. You've got to get behind the curtain, if you like. And that's what I've been fascinated by, revealing the wider story of resilience. There's a process. And that's the primary idea, to get emotionally engaged with an idea. So to get behind the curtain. So there is a process behind resilience. And I've got 6 key process skills, which I can share later on, related to the train track. And finally, provide people with tools that they can access. So, for example, I've got a card here. It's got the image of the train track on, Manny.
Yeah.
And on the back, I've got maybe 8 hacks. I keep that in my pocket and I take it out whenever I can, although a lot of those I've automated, they're literally in my subconscious now, that just becomes second nature now. But I do believe that when you're trying to share the concept of resilience with young people, you have to get behind the curtain. You have to, first of all, know, I believe, who you are, know thyself, to even begin start talking about resilience, because it's you're right, man, it is about going for all those hard knocks. But it's helping people understand what's behind that first, what's the processes, to enable them then to start to go, oh, resilience is that, is it? I've never seen it like that before. And that goes back to my experience in education. When you're trying to teach a young child a new concept, you don't just go in with all the facts. You have to find out, how does that child think? What type of learner are they? And get them engaged emotionally so they really feel confident and inspired in order then to tackle the topic of, say, resilience. Does that make sense? So
that makes sense.
It's the bit behind. It's the bit behind the curtain that I'm fascinated in.
I don't think we talk about the bit behind the curtain enough, do we? I think I like the way I explained it was like life experiences, challenges. You look at it from a similar point of view in terms of like step 1, but then actually the emotional involvement and how do we educate and prepare people for resilience.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. You see, the thing is, we have to remember, and again, if I was meeting somebody for the first time, a younger person, they say, just tell me about resilience, Tony. First of all, I have walked the walk. I can see it in my imagination now. This particular street I was walking down 2 years into my business, I had £5 left in my bank account, right? And I'm walking along and I'm going, and the ego in here is chatting away going, you fool, this is all a waste of time, all your big dreams and goals, it hasn't worked. Whereas I knew after everything I'd studied that if you can hold an image in your mind, you can hold it in your hand, but there wasn't the evidence just yet. And do you know what happened, Manny? It was almost like a spiritual experience. I'm walking along and I stopped, and this presence came over that went, no, you know exactly what you were doing. You're exactly in the right place. Because by shedding everything and taking that leap into the unknown, you're growing, you're learning to trust, you're discovering everything that's innate to fulfillment in life. And it was like an epiphany. I was like, wow. And I went, do you know what? I'm just going to keep going. Similar to your point, Manny, about you said you just keep going. So that's the bit. It's almost like this. To me, it's the secret to fulfillment, because we were designed as human beings to adapt, to evolve. We're only here now in this podcast studio because of thousands of millions of years evolving as humans. How have we done that? Through resilience. It's who we are. And I think we're in a culture now where people go, resilience, it needs to be something I need to bolt on, I need to find. No, you already are it. It's what you are as a human being Then they go, well, how do I do that? Well, let's start finding out what a human being is. You empower, and then you're able to see resilience as being this wonderful goal towards fulfillment in life. And it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think we as humans, have evolved by being resilient over time. How do you see it?
Yeah, I reckon so. I find this really interesting on the basis that it's quite a fine line, isn't it, between talking about resilience in the way that we have done and then that concept of, suck it up, get on with things. And it's kind of like it's a balance between those two. What I'm interested in asking you, and this is kind of a two-part question, but I think that they are related, which is why I'm going to ask them in the same go. One is, are some people just born more resilient than others? And linked to that, does it differ between generations? Because I reckon there were people listening to this saying, people back in the 40s, back in the 50s were way more resilient than we are today, and kids growing up now and that whole kind of rhetoric. And I guess some of this maybe links a little bit to lockdown, COVID, and some of the effects of that on younger people today. So the kind of are two different questions, but in my head they're a little bit linked. You might want to kind of tackle them separately. What's your perspective on those, Tony? First
of all, your first question, yes, people are born we're all born differently. I'll have to hands up here, everybody. I definitely am border on the autistic spectrum. Because I just know I'm an incredibly creative soul, and not everybody always gets me because of that. So if you give me a spreadsheet, I'm like, I just can't compute. But I've had to learn to live with that. But there's joy in that as well. Yes, we're all born different, and I think some people, are born naturally more resilient than others. Definitely, that's true. However, I still believe that everybody has something still to learn about resilience, and the fact that life is supposed to be not a college of learning, but a collage of learning, lots and lots and lots of different experiences. So I think, the whole idea that we can keep learning is absolutely critical in leadership development in the workplace. You've got to get really thirsty and passionate about the idea that life is about learning, and then you seep into that. Generation-wise, now this is interesting because I'm at sort of the latter end of life here, I suppose, if you like, the second half, which is great, because I've got more energy now than I have at 20. So what's that? So this is great. Because I just look, passion's made up of 3 words: pass, on. Right? So when you're passionate, you're passing it on. So it's interesting because when I thought about that question, I've done that journey. So early on, when I first started teaching, the stresses were Ofsted inspections, children throwing chairs at me because I taught in a very, very tough school. Quick funny story there, right? I was in Safeways at that time shopping, and I was buying a marrow from the vegetable area, and this old lady walked up to me and said, "Oh, young man," she said at that time. She said, "Oh, young man, it's lovely to see a young man buying a marrow. We don't see that often these days. What are you going to do with it?" So I told her I was going to stuff it with mince. She's like, "Oh, that's really interesting, Tony." He says, "Tell me what you do." Right, we're near Halloween, so this kind of links in nicely. "Tell me what you do," like in a mystical way. So I said, "Well, I'm a teacher and I teach at X school." "Oh," she said, "I bet that's hard," which it was. It was tough. I had a fist fight in my class, 7-year-olds on the first day. That toughened me up. And I went, "Yeah, it is difficult. I'm struggling because I come from Oxford and I've moved up to the north of England." Do you know what she said? Check this out, guys. She went right up close to me, Manny, with a bony finger, and she went, "Yes, but you needed to see that young man." And I turned like that. This is a true story. And when I turned around, she disappeared. She'd gone. So what she was saying to me is, "Yeah, but you need to see that. And only later on in life will you look back and realise how powerful that experience was." I thought, wow, is that ever good? So in answer to your question, when we're younger, the challenges are different than when we get older. For example, now, my worries is my mum who's in a dementia home and my poor father who has illness problems. The shift changes. When you're younger, it could be, I need to get ahead of on the ladder with my mortgage or my career. Well, as you grow older, it shifts. But the essence of resilience still stays the same. Can you stop in the present moment and find gratitude for something right now? The fact that you're breathing, start from there, move outwards. You can do it. So it definitely changes. I've got some stats that are interesting about generations here. Gen X, which is your lowest, have the lowest resilience, that's your 18 to 25. Research was done in 60 countries, 4,000 people, This is from the Wellbeing Resilience Report, and Gen X was shown to be the least resilient, which is interesting. But I think as we become older, those just change, the pressures change. In fact, you can get resistance, can't you? You get, I've done all that, I don't need to learn anything new. Listen, son, I've heard all this before, which equally isn't as good. So,
and do you think that's related to generations, or is that just an age thing? If we were doing this podcast episode 50 years ago, whatever the generations were labelled then, would it still have been 18 to 25s are the least resilient? Is it just a bit of a back to where we started this episode, really, in terms of as you grow up and as you experience more, as you get to know yourself better? I think resilience probably hand in hand with kind of accepting who you are a bit more.
Well, the self-development industry took off in the 1960s. So if we go back prior to that, I think there was a general consensus that you went and got a job and you looked after your family and it was black and white. It would have been a different world. Now, I can't really comment on that deep because I didn't live then. I do know about now, which is our lives, and we'll all agree on this, are constantly bombarded by distractions that are saying, if you get over there, you'll be happier. If you like that person, you'll be better off. It's all about comparing ourselves with somebody else that's doing something that we're doing and it's better than us, right? You'll never move forward like that. You've got to, first of all, find joy in just being you. And then step out into the immediate community and share that with the person next door, the guy that runs the coffee shop. That's the secret to life, and roll that out. And I think that's the biggest problem we have in today's society. And you know what? It's eating away at young people's resilience.
I think it's to do with, a lot of that's got to do with social media. Probably. I think when you talk about, when you see that over there, you want that, and then you want that, and you think you'd be better off over there, and all that kind of stuff is, I always say this, is people show a fake life in social media. And you look at influencers today, and everything, it is literally, look at all this, but then I go out in places and I see people make these videos against cars that are not theirs, or restaurants where it's all fake. And I've always said my personal Instagram is closed off, and I share everything I've been through, from my dialysis to my steroid treatment to everything, my good times and my bad times, because I just don't want to show fake, but it's closed off from the world because my social media is for me. I'm not competing against anyone else. You talked about multi-generation, and a quote came to my mind, which is, hard times make strong men, strong men make good times make weak men, weak times make hard times make strong men. And I think as we go, it's a continuous cycle. And the idea isn't to be sexist, I was just thinking that those times change over periods. So when we go back to maybe 50 years ago, it was a lot more harder in terms of earning, in terms of society, the lack of technology, what we have now. It's a lot. I'm not surprised to read the statistic that, Gen Z are the least resilient, because we're in good times, we're in easy times, and easy times make generally weak people. And weak times will then make weak people will actually create harder times. I think it was Jimmy Carter that says, show me a child from a trust fund and I'll show you someone who is just miserable, because money isn't the answer to everything. What we see isn't the answer to everything. And I think when we talk back to resilience, it comes down to, and one of the questions that I know you're going to ask is, why is it so important in 2024 to be so resilient? And I think my generation is the last to go through hard times. And when I say that is, I grew up in a household of 9 in a semi-detached house. Now, I'm not here to get sympathy from everyone, but my mum worked 2 jobs. My dad worked. There were 7 kids. I was the youngest of 7 in a 3-bed detached house. You try to even contemplate that now. It's difficult. We expect so many luxuries and phones. We didn't have telephones then. We didn't have social media then. We had to entertain ourselves. We looked after each other. They were hard times. My parents came over as immigrants and wanted to work and provide a better life for us. We're now benefiting from that. My generation, my family, my siblings are benefiting from that. And I see it with my brother's children, because I have children. And no offense, bro, but they're just so, there's no resilience. They're just so, any little bit of criticism, they'll go cry in a corner. They can't hack it or handle it. You can see that it's so easy for them that they expect it all, because we want to give what we didn't have. as generations. We want to give freely. My brother wants to give to his children what he never got from our parents, because our parents had to obviously build something in tough times. But they've got it easy. They've got ample toys. They've got more than they need. They come home from school and they're straight onto their Nintendo, DSs and everything. And I think it's generationally it changes. But what I will predict is, because they will end up creating hard times for themselves if they're not careful, which means their next generation will feel what we felt growing up. Because I can build a fortune and I can provide it to my next generation, but the higher likelihood is, unless they are guided and taught and understand resilience in the right way, they'll probably blow that. And then you'll end up back to square one, essentially, which means building from scratch down. I think my dad might have mentioned it, like, back in generations, we were linked to a highly wealthy, like royalist family, technically like long distance. So it's like, well, we've really fallen far from the tree, haven't we? So it goes to show that it's like it's needed. And in my opinion, I think the next generation is very, very weak, and they get offended by even the littlest of things. And they're coddled too much, and they're coddled by society and people that just say, yes, you can be offended by this. It's like, no, it's just words. Mm-hmm. It's an opinion. An opinion shouldn't offend you because it's an opinion. Unless someone's going up to your face and shouting and swearing and demeaning you and being offensive to you, that's a whole different thing. That's what I got growing up, coming from a brown young kid. I had kids call me a girl because I had long hair and, treat me. I mean, that's the kind of resilience we grew up with in high school and what we had to deal with. I think the kids these days, none of that. Example, went to take my nephew to a football game. They're not allowed to head the ball. They're not allowed to do throwings. There's no such thing as offside. And I'm losing my shit at the side because I'm shouting to the referee, that's offside. And then the other one, the parents saying, yeah, they don't do that. It comes to a throw in. I'm like, throw it in. I was like, no, they kick it in. And I was like, they can't take corners, can't head it because of this whole nurturing a young kid heading the football. I mean, it's like we used to play on bikes and fall over and hit our head against concrete and walk back home and be fine the next day. And our parents would be like, yeah, you'll be all right, get on with it. Basic kind of stuff. So I think the environment and how generations have changed in terms of that, good times make, hard times make easy times make hard times, etc., plays a big role in different generational resilience. But that's, again, just my opinion based on my life experience.
But you know what, Manny? Centre to all of that, can you take a step back from that? Because I like taking those steps back. Like if you say to somebody, what are you? And they go, well, I'm Bill. You say, well, you're not Bill, that's just a name, take a step back. I do this with the children that I tutor, and they go deeper and deeper, and they suddenly realise there's an epiphany, and there's power inside them. But going back to the point, it's education. Education comes from the Latin educa, which means to develop or draw out from within. What do we do in school? Cram the information in, do as you're told. So I think a lot of this, I think these young people, in a way, it's happened to them. It's not really their fault. No. It's the structure. That's why I got out of the system. I couldn't stand it anymore because I knew I'd studied lifelong learners, read all the great books on inspiration and applied it to myself. And you know what? And I'm not going to go into it now because this is about your listeners, about their goals and dreams. But I can say categorically now, I can prove, and I could read off 5 stories, maybe another time. If you can hold an image in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. It might take you 10 years, but you will get there. That is your power. What we're not telling young people about is their true identity. Know thyself. Do you really know yourself? Do you know how this thing works? That's the secret. Because if we gave that power to children at a very young age, they'd have that they'd build that resilience up. That's the one thing that stops me crumbling. So I'll stop and say, I know who I am.
I'm going to be a little controversial here. I think we're giving that power to kids in the wrong way. When I see things like if a kid says, well, I'm a dog, I can be a dog. And we're not here to talk about, that kind of whole topic. I don't want to get into that because I'll be honest with you, I just don't have the appetite or the capacity to even discuss that element. But we're giving children that power and then we're not actually standing up for it in that specific situation because a child can't say they're a dog or a cat or something else. That's just a child's mind which isn't nurtured or matured or developed or evolved enough to understand the difference between right or wrong or where we are. So how do you give, what age do you give a child?
You start as early as you possibly can. When I go to tutor, so my youngest child might be 6 or 7. The first thing I do, check this out, the first thing, and I would be exactly the same working with business, right? You can't change the world, but you can change somebody's world. And if you meet the right person, I'm sure you've met this person, all of us have met that person in our lives, and you say, I have a bit more of that. What's he on or what's she on? It infects you, doesn't it? And people refer to what I do as a conduit, a way of like a pipe going under the ground that connects with the other person, but you're not always doing that verbally. It's a connection, because we all of us want fulfillment in life. That's what we're all looking for, aren't we? Safety, security, fulfillment, happiness. But I think that what I do with that child on that first day is I say to the parent, when I leave, you ask that child if you want Mr. Mallet back again. And if they say, nah, it's boring, I'm not coming back. It's as simple as that. No, it's never happened. Because on that first session, I tell these children the secret. I say, right, I give them a card and I say, right, this is your power. And I change their mindset and I build that up. So they get a bit of self-pride in what they're actually capable of or could do. And you literally see them change in front of your eyes. And then you come back and you just build on that. And that is the secret. And I'm not talking about obviously saying, Manny, yes, what you're talking about there, Manny, is imagination, aren't you? The ability to... Yeah, well, imagination is the most powerful tool that you've got at your disposal.
But you said if they can imagine it in 10 years' time, like if we... And I agree with you. I imagine where I want to be in business in my career, and I keep that in the forefront of my mind. And you say it. If you can imagine it here, you can hold it here in your hand.
Absolutely.
Right. But I think in certain ways at a younger age, and we're going to go back to the topic about business shortly, I think that a kid's imagination can be too vivid and too wild at such a young age for them to really know what they want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. But then again, we want dreamers. We want people to think big.
Yes,
absolutely. But just keeping it, I hear what you're saying.
A kid at the age of 2 and 3 isn't going to be dreaming about being an astronaut anytime soon. They might like a space film, but they're not going to think, right, that's it. Yeah. Very rarely does that happen. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the Lewis Hamiltons of the world who actually started kine at the age of 2 or 3, or you look at Lionel Messi or Ronaldinho's of the world, they nurtured that sport or that element into them and they were passionate about it and then went on to achieve and become, well, Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest drivers of all time. Don't even need to say what Lionel Messi is. But I think within the workplace, it's the same thing. I think we've got to look at it in a different way. But you've got some more questions, and I want to get through some more of these.
I do want to. I want to kind of go on to that sort of business thread. But it's been really interesting listening to you both. There were some really interesting moments in there. Just for a second, Tony, you kind of touched on this idea of like joy and gratitude and that whole kind of mindfulness thing, which I find I'm really fascinated with at the moment. I'm not going to ask about that specifically. There also seemed to be something in there where you said if you go into a shop and pick up a marrow, a witch appears, which is
yeah, that's definitely
which I'm going to try. Sadly, Safeway is no longer around, but I'm going to try it in Morrison's after we finish. I don't know where you buy marrows from anymore. I don't know if you can buy them. So yeah, business came up a few times in there. What's your? I'll probably ask you this first, Manny, as a business owner. Business and resilience. There's definitely a connection there. You definitely need some of the resilience to kind of make it in business. What's your kind of thoughts on that whole sort of thing? On where resilience fits into business.
Yeah, I think if you're a business owner or a leader, you're very, very resilient compared to the average person. I think business owners' leadership, and if you go back and listen to episodes 1 or 2, you realise that you have to be extremely resilient to get through those kind of situations. I think, yeah, I'd say I'm much more resilient because I'm now in a position where I'm like, right, I control what you can control. That's it. But I've been through so many examples, I'm not going to say case studies, but scenarios of business, good and bad, to know how to deal with it. But that's what makes it better. The best example I can give is one of my employees, Lewis. Lewis came to us over 2.5 years ago, wanting to work for Bobble Digital, but had no experience. So I wasn't going to hire someone at his wage level because realistically, if I'm going to pay that much, you need to have a good couple of years of experience underneath you. So I engaged with him on LinkedIn, had a conversation with him. I said, look, go away and do this. And if you really want it, you'll go do it. And he actually went away and did it. So he showcased and did his own learnings, courses, came on board, and I was like, okay, this is someone I can develop and grow. And his resilience to say, no, I'm not going to give up. I want to be part of this, or you could call it his motivation or his drive or his passion. I think all those words sometimes get blended together, but I think there's an overlap with all of them to some degree. And his resilience to where now he's one of the most senior people and experts within paid media, trained obviously by yours truly, Mr. Bobble, but I now go to him, right, to the point where I'm like, what should we do? The client's asking this, whereas before he'd be coming up to me. He's now within 2.5 years developed such a skill set where it's like I just let him get on with it now. And he's built so much resilience of dealing with clients, new businesses, difficult clients, even more recently. Laura's in the room, she understands that. And he's still learning that leadership side and management side from me in terms of how to deal with those situations. But the resilience of being able to deal with high pressure ad accounts and clients, and resilience of actually developing his career to where he is absolutely fantastic. So what does resilience mean to me when it comes to business is, not giving up, showing that you want it. And if you want it, there'll be people around you that are going to support you emotionally, they're going to support you financially, going to support you in terms of experience to get you through that period. We have another employee who's a bit frustrated right now because, and I said, I'm not going to help you with this one. You need to go through this frustration because it's going to prepare you for the next time you get frustrated. And when digital marketing's like this, it's a wave, it's a tidal wave. We enjoy the ride up, but you've got to now learn with the drop, because there's going to be another ride up and we're going to have another drop. But the idea is it's an upwards trajectory. Yeah. And I went, I'm going to guide you as best as I can, but I'm going to let you deal with this, because how you deal with this will prepare you for the next drop that'll happen in the next 2-3 months, and you'll get frustrated again. And unfortunately, that's just by of the industry we're in. It's very fast paced. It's that work hard, play hard situation.
Okay. Tony, anything you want to respond on from what Manny said there, but also what would be your, let's say, top 3 tips for business owners when it comes to developing their team's resilience?
Oh, absolutely. Just can I quickly respond to what Manny, because I love that bit Manny said about the ups and downs, and you're absolutely right. Because from my own experience with resilience, the first dip nearly kills you. The second dip nearly kills you a little bit less, and a little bit less. When you get to like 1,000 down the line, you just kind of go, bring it on.
Yeah.
Right? And it's infectious, and you just kind of go, and then this sort of, I don't know if you get this much, like a deep sense of inner respect to go, it's all good. It's all good. Or it will work out. That's the sweet spot, because then you develop this sort of autonomy that just powers you through. But also humility as well, because you just, like I got rained on this morning and wet, and there was somebody in the bus stop moaning about it, and I stood there just thinking, oh, thank you. Because it's that wonderful sense of sort of learning.
We actually had that this month, and one of them team members was like, but what if the client leaves? I was like, well, the client leaves. And they're looking at me like, oh, but it's like, I've been through that many dips. I'm like, no, if a client's being too demanding and not falling within our elements, and then, and we had it. I'm not going to say the client. And they were like, right, you've got a few weeks to turn it around. I was like, I can't perform miracles. I'm sorry. It's just not possible. And my calmness and my respectfulness in that email took the pressure off the team, because the team was like, no, we can't perform miracles. We're good, but no other agency can do that. And we've been, fighting this with one arm tied behind our back all the way through. And it's all those experiences and all those drops for me to realize, like, okay, right, we lose a 2K a month retainer. Right, there'll be another client around the corner. We've got a strong pipeline. It's kind of almost like, right, fine. Yeah. It's and not to sound bad or critical in any way of that client or to kind of boast. It's like, no, it's at the point where at the first time I'd be like, oh, no, I'm going to lose client. What am I going to do? I've only got 3 weeks to turn around. Now I'm like, no, been there, done that. Don't need to put that pressure on the team or myself. We're fine. It'll work its way out because we've been through it.
It's a paralysis, because when you're in that mode, the paralysis freezes you, and that takes up so much energy and time that you learn through resilience that actually you just drop it, because all the world wants you to be is yourself. And that's actually how things will come to you. The more that you're authentic in yourself, you're not trying to be something you're not, and you share that with the world comes closer to you. But the trouble is, if you don't gain the resilience, you've got this paralysis, which for weeks you can hold yourself and say, oh, that failed, oh, yeah, I'm a failure. So, but going back to your hacks.
Top three.
Top three hacks. Top three hacks would be, number one, have this card, because this card is the reminder for the inner narrative. So my first hack is to teach young people within business some hacks. The most important one is the narrative. What are you saying to yourself? So I'll give you some examples, and I use these every single day. Something goes wrong, or you got a hiccup like Manny was saying, is that thought serving me? That can turn your moment around. Is that thought serving me? Yes or no? Well, if it's not serving you, learn to bin it. Might take 100 goes, but practice that. And I give these out to my pupils as well, and when I work with young people. That which doesn't destroy me only makes me stronger. It's the truth. And the more you say it to yourself, the more you begin to embody it and believe it. I'm one step closer when something fails. That's true. Because every failure isn't like... If you look at the word failure, Manny, there's a word in there, lure, L-U-R-E, lure you in like this. Yeah. It's a failure, right? If failure does that to you. So when you know that, you say, well, failure is actually just a pivot point to learn from. It's so powerful. One step closer. What am I learning is a very powerful one. What am I learning right now? Because in any failure moment, because you're pivoting it. Everything's already here. I know that's a bit existential, but it's something which works for me. Everything's already here. If not me, who? If not me, who? That's my first hack. The second hack is the flip it tool. And I've got these all on this card. The flip it tool works like this. So, Manny, something really, really badly goes wrong, and you see it as something, a setback or a failure. Right. If I hold that,
use me as a case study.
So let's say, for example, something goes a bit hiccupy and a bit bad. Yeah. This is the flip it tool. Every positive has to, by law, have a negative. Has to, by law. It's a universal law. So something goes bad. Just think an example.
There goes my dating life.
So think of something that's gone, negative, not too good. And we drown in that what you talked about as being that sort of I'm caught, I'm stagnated, I'm frozen in that moment. Flip it to turn that narrative around into something that's positive from that example. And you can do this with any situation. Just think of something that went a bit wrong recently.
Yeah, I'm thinking of something.
Okay, now it takes training. Now force yourself to stop labouring on that thought, which it would do. The ego would do that.
Yeah.
The ego's got two roles: one to push you down, one to make you feel better than somebody else. Turn it round and find the positive in it. What's the good in that? What was the good in that situation? And try and find it.
It's like reframing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Reframing
it's
so
really
powerful.
Interesting. It's really
and you can do that with everything. You really can. All right, you can do it with everything. Now it takes practice, and again, I give the cards out to the people I work with first. They keep it in their pockets and take them out, but eventually it becomes habitual. The last one, this is critical. I'm sure many of you'll love this one. Community. The importance of surrounding yourself with like-minded people that are going to lift you up or give you that bit of wisdom, as opposed to wisdom over ego. Because the ego is our biggest problem. You can't get rid of the ego, but it's always there. It's shattering away. Look at Manny, when we first met, I sensed all this, because you gave me loads of quotes and I was writing them all down, and that's why I wrote that in the book for you. Wisdom came over. I thought, this person's a lifelong learner, and suddenly there's that synergy. But check this out. When you start looking in the world for those people, you will find them. In the same way that if you look for misfortune, you'll find misfortune. If you look for sadness, go out into the world. The first day I left school, I went out with my jacket on, out for a meeting, and I thought, I'm going to look smart, and I'm going to go out, I'm going to put my hand out and say, hi, my name's Tony Mallet. I'm just put out.
Did you have the lizard in the pocket when you did that?
I didn't have the lizard in the pocket at that time.
We have to get that in.
I didn't have the lizard in at the time.
That was going to be my final question.
Yeah. The reason I've got the lizard in the pocket, right, is because I was at, bless him, Gordon Bateman's climb. But just a quick shout out for Gordon Bateman. Out of one person, apart from Manny, of course, that I've met in my journey, I'm sure we can cut this out if you want later on. But I think, right. The thing about Gordon is that he's the one person that I can touch base with that will encourage. And we say, no, Tony, keep going, because if I don't say it to you, you might not always say it to yourself.
But it comes to your hack of community.
Yeah, it's critical, the ecosystem. And I tell you one thing, I've met some absolutely wonderful people in the community ecosystem. I've met some people also being a bit scary, but find them, because when you surround yourself by that energy, it becomes infectious and you'll bounce off each other. And they encourage you, they keep you going. So that's my final hack on there, that I think that's the most important thing.
I agree with that last one the most. I had this conversation with a couple of my best mates, and they were giving me advice, and I had to stop them there. And I said, look, your guys are like family. I appreciate advice, but I'm never going to listen to it. On one basis, that you're not where you are in your life where I want to be. I want advice from when I look at somebody, they're where I would like to be in my career, in my business, or where I want to be in my life. So I was like, the advice you're giving me is redundant, because it's going to lead me to your path. And no offense, you guys work 9 to 5. I'm not a 9 to 5 guy. I work more. I work 18 hours a day because I run a business, but that's a sacrifice I make. But I want to retire in 10, 15 years. I don't want to continue working for the next 35. So your advice is based on your situation and where you want to be with your families and your 9 to 5s, but I'm different. So when I go out and I had advisors, it's advisors who have been and built and run and sold digital marketing agencies. I go up to people that are entrepreneurs that have built and advised for big companies, because they're where I want to be. They have the knowledge and insights. That's the community within the business sphere that I hang around myself. They're the people that I make good friends with as well. Not alienating my childhood friends, because they're going to be key to my emotional, my togetherness as that element of family. But yes, I agree. Your community is it. It comes back to that old adage: is your network is your net worth, and your net worth becomes your network.
Absolutely. I feel like we could probably carry on talking for the rest of the afternoon, but
yes.
We're not just out of time, we are over time. There's going to be someone knocking on the door to throw us out in a second, so we're going to have to wrap up, I'm afraid. But thank you, guys. No,
I want to thank Tony, and I would highly recommend read the book. It's really good, and doing that exercise. And we'll put all these links on the YouTube for you to share, and links to the website. And I highly recommend you reach out and connect with Tony on LinkedIn. Thank you, everyone. We've been on a hell of a conversational journey with that, and that's what I love about meeting people like Tony. When we first met, I said I want you on the podcast because I knew this is the kind of conversation we would have. If you liked what what you've listened to, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. Obviously, click the bell notification button on YouTube, and don't forget to follow the at Mr. Bobble official social platforms. Like, getting the numbers up. We want a few more. We'll catch you on the next episode, where we've got another guest talking about something completely different. So thank you for joining us.